What's going on, guys? JD at JD's Custom Buggies. Want to do a video on electrical components to help you guys figure things out and basically identify what the job of each component is to do. Kind of like we did with the clutching video, and we'll get into other videos about electrical because I know that there are a lot of questions about electrical. So basically want to break it down. I guess everything, we'll break it down in the cranking section, the ignition section, the charging section. We'll do it like that. Everything basically begins with a key switch. So you got a couple different styles of key switch, but this is your basically two varieties of your 3-wire key switch. This one here is a plug and play version for like a Trailmaster or a Hammerhead, American Sportworks Carbide. This would plug right in and do it, but the 3 wires do the same job. It's easier to explain it on the 3-wire or on the old school one. If you have a switch like this, whether you get it at an auto parts store or if it's a buggy item or whatever, these 3 legs are numbered. You have 1, 2, and 3. Leg number 1 is where your source is coming from to feed the other 2 legs. So whether it be ground or whether it be hot, depending on how you're wiring the buggy, it comes into number 1. As you turn it, the key, to number 2, that would be your ignition. Okay? And then when you turn it to 3rd position, that would be number 3, and that's your basically what for your solenoid. That's what starts to crank the motor over, and then when you let go, it stays back in the ignition position. So very simple. It all depends on how you want to wire it, and how you want to wire it will be a completely different video. Now, once you turn the key and you crank it, basically as you're cranking, you're talking to your solenoid here. Now your solenoid has 2 big lugs. One gets a battery cable, the other one gets a starter cable. And what this pigtail does here is the open circuit to allow this lug to talk to this lug. So it takes, to allow the battery power to get to this lug to feed your starter. Now this is kind of hard to screw up because it doesn't matter which wire is ground and it doesn't matter which wire is hot, as long as one of them goes to hot and the other one goes to ground. I usually use the yellow on the hot. And again, depending on how you wire it up, you can wire it grounds to the key switch or you can wire hot wires to the key switch. But one of these wires has to go to a switch. The other one, if it's a ground, it goes, let's say you're wiring the hot to the key switch, the ground wire's just got to basically be grounded. When you turn the key, it feeds the hot, turns on the solenoid. The opposite is, you could take your hot wire, put it back on this lug where the battery's coming in, and then take your ground wire, go to the key switch, and if you have it wired for grounds, you turn it and you're basically giving ground to the solenoid, which will allow the solenoid to work because you just opened the circuit. Basically, once that happens, it goes to your starter. Okay, the starter is grounded once it's plugged into the motor because your motor's got to be grounded for it to start. Alright, so it gets its ground from the motor and then the starter cable comes to this tab up here. Once that solenoid turns on, you're just basically feeding hot here and boom, starter spins. If you ever want to test your starter, you can take your battery charger and clip one of the clips to the body of the starter and then hold onto it and touch the hot to this side and it should tell you if your starter's locked up or not. It should free spin, or should spin free. Once that happens, the key switch is going to spring back into your ignition position. Now, with that being said, the next thing in line is the CDI. Now, we've talked about AC and DC CDIs and how the plugs go and everything. But if it's AC, then, or if it's DC, I should say, then the key switch to the ignition position is feeding 12-volt power to here. If it's AC, to wire to a key switch, you're probably going to want to wire the key switch to grounds and basically use the key switch to allow this to get ground to function. Okay. Just to quickly go over the plugs again. So this upper corner here, right or left, I'm going backwards. So this upper corner here is basically your trigger coming in from your stator. Plug next to it on the 4 plug in the upper corner goes out to your coil. The 2 bottom plugs on the 4 plug are both ground. Either or does not matter. They both do the same thing. You can use either or, both, whatever you want to do. Top plug on a 2 plug is your kill switch. How you can wire that is if you have a kill switch on your dash, you can wire that to the switch, and then wire the switch to ground. When you hit it, it will ground out the CDI and shut off the motor. And then the bottom of the 2 plug is your power source, whether it be AC or DC, depending on how you have the buggy wired, but that's where the power comes in. If it's AC, then the power is going to come in from your stator harness. If it's DC, it's going to come from 12 volts from your key switch. Alright, so that brings us to, the coil next. So, you have your coil. Again, you can't screw this up. It's kind of like your solenoid. One side's got to be grounded. The other side gets the output from the CDI. It doesn't matter which leg does which, as long as one is on one and one is on the other. Okay. And then this end gets the spark plug. Spark plug goes in the head. We all know how that works. Going from there, we got our stator. 2 typical varieties would be 8-pole or 6-pole that come stock in our buggies. Difference between it is 8-pole is going to give you more charging output than a 6-pole. Wiring is the same on both. You have your pickup. There's a flywheel that goes over this. As the flywheel spins, these coils here generate AC power, which that's basically the power source. Kind of works like a generator. This pickup sits on top of the flywheel, and there's a metal tab that passes under this magnet, and that's the trigger that tells it when to spark, and that's what goes to your CDI. So looking at the wires, these 3 wires are your charging system. These 2 wires are your AC power, if you're running AC CDI, and your trigger wire. If you're running DC CDI, then this wire does not get used. Okay, the AC power wire, which is the red and black. Just the blue and white goes to the trigger. Okay. So that pretty much explains that. Now these charging wires, they're going to go to your rectifier. Now, I can go into stories and stuff of what happened to me and this and that from my experiences, but just to cut it short, if you're going to use an AC, or if you're going from 6-pole to 8-pole stator, and your rectifier looks like this as a 6-pole, you're probably going to want to upgrade your rectifier also. Okay, this is a 6-pole stator rectifier in my book. That's an 8-pole stator rectifier. All right, if you're going from one to the other, then swap your rectifiers also. I had an issue when I did it for the first time, and it took me a while to figure it out, and what it came down to was swapping the rectifiers. So that's the way it goes. Now, what is the rectifier's job? First of all, if you have a spark issue, then the rectifier is not the place to look. Okay, all this does is it takes the AC power generated by your stator and magneto and turns it into DC power to charge your battery. Okay, so it's like a translator from AC to DC. Old school dirt bikes, they run on AC power. They have an AC CDI. You kickstart them. They don't have the electric start. You don't have a battery. AC. When DC comes into play is when you have a battery to start the machine and this and that and the other thing. So that's what the job of the rectifier is to do. That is to take the AC power from the magneto and just turn it into DC so it'll charge your battery. So that's a quick breakdown of the different components. So, I mean, if you have spark issues, we can eliminate our rectifier. We can eliminate these charging wires, that these 2 wires might have a bearing on that. And pickups do go bad in stators, so, I mean, that can be an issue. I mean, if you have no spark, it could be a bad key switch, it could be a bad CDI, it could be a bad coil, and it could be maybe the pickup in your stator, okay? But it won't be the rectifier. It won't be the charging wires coming out of the stator. It would have to do with the pickup wire and the AC power maybe. So that kind of eliminates that. It wouldn't be your solenoid. It wouldn't be your starter. You know what I mean? If your motor's not turning over and you think it's electrical, then you know it's not going to be, I mean, you might have a dead battery, so in which case the rectifier would be the cause. But if you have juice at the battery and the starter is just locked up, it's probably key switch, solenoid, or starter. So hopefully that kind of helps you break it down and just kind of simplifies it for you. I'm not saying that this video is going to be the solution. Like I said, this is going to have to go in baby steps where we just make different videos. So, you know, if I threw everything at you wiring-wise, the video would probably be an hour, and it would be a lot to absorb in one sitting. So these are just the components, what their names are and what they do. So if you like what you see, give it a like, subscribe. We're giving away a CVT system in the next 2 weeks. And if you have any questions, by all means, leave them in the comments. And, or if you have a comment, I'd love to hear it. So, you can visit JD's Custom Buggies on Facebook if you need to message me that way, by all means. And of course, if you're looking for any of these parts, they're all available on GotBuggies.com. So, thanks a lot. Talk to you later.